The views expressed on this broadcast of the Take 12 Recovery Radio Show do not necessarily reflect those of Take 12 Radio, KHLT Recovery Broadcasting, or our affiliates. Take 12 Radio and KHLT Recovery Broadcasting are not affiliated with any particular 12-step fellowship.
Now here are your co-hosts, Tony Messbarger and the Monty'man.
Well, greetings, recovery family. How the heck are you today? Welcome to another broadcast here at Take12Radio.com on your internet dial, broadcasting to you from the outskirts of beautiful downtown Albany, Oregon, where the sun is shining many more days out of the year than what rumor has it about Oregon. But we do get our share of rain. It's very green up here. And we have Tony Messbarger on the phone with us once again, but he's talking to us from Texas. Tony, is it nice and toasty there today?
Actually, we had a little bit of a cool front blow through here, so it's a little bit gray here today, but, we're sitting at probably around 60 degrees, something like that, with little cloudy skies, but it's always beautiful here.
Yeah.
We're finishing up winter.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends that want me to move to Texas, Tony. I don't know. I just... I don't know if I can handle the heat.
There's enough land down here. That's for sure.
Well, folks, this is the first time you've joined us. This is part 4 of a 4-part series workshop entitled Understanding Intervention. And Tony is a admissions consultant for Benchmark Recovery Center, formerly known as the Mark Houston Center. The website for that treatment facility is benchmarkcenter.com. And you can follow the links here at Take 12 Radio, also on our YouTube page. And Tony has been gracious enough to commit this time to us to do these 4 workshops. And we call these workshops because these are more than just an interview with somebody sharing their experience, strength, and hope. Or listening to a circuit speaker or listening to recovery music. These are something that I would encourage you, if you know anybody that is in need of an intervention, if you know family members that are wondering about intervention, what interventions are, what they aren't, what takes place, the different kinds. We're going to be talking about transport and treatment during part 4 here. But this is a really good opportunity to take this workshop and sit down with folks and let them listen to this. Or do what they used to do in the old days in Alcoholics Anonymous. They would leave a big book with someone on the first approach, on the first visit. And so you can make copies. You can burn copies of this. You just click on the download MP3 link on this page, and you can burn copies of this and maybe leave it at somebody's house. But I encourage you to do that. And it is such an honor to have Tony with us. And Tony, I'm blessed. And like you said off the air, we're gonna keep in close contact. But this has been a real eye opener for me, and I know for many of our listeners. And I just wanted to say that already we have somebody from the Oregon area that is in contact with one of our board members, Matt Brown, who is the CEO of Freedom Interventions out of McMinnville, Oregon. And because of this workshop, they are now working on getting an individual that I used to be his sponsor years ago. And he's just he's just a mess. This guy is just a mess. And he really is in need of an intervention. It's never been done before with him. And he's going to die if something drastic doesn't happen. And
but you got a good interventionist there, Monty, for sure.
Yeah, Matt is a great guy. So of course I'm partial to Benchmark and Origins and Burning Tree and stuff like that. So I'm like, it'd be great if we get him into Benchmark. It'd be awesome. But anyway, so this is part 4. This is the last of our 4. Now, folks, you can access this on our website under workshops at take12radio.com. This will be up indefinitely, and maybe at some point we'll update it and talk some more about this kind of thing. But this is available for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So, okay, Tony, so our first workshop was understanding intervention. What is intervention? Our second workshop was getting the family on board, family, loved ones, employers, friends, on the same page, and what that entailed. And then third was face-to-face, working with family members face-to-face, the person we're intervening on face-to-face, and how that works. And now we've moved into transport and treatment. Now, this is where listeners, the individual that is being intervened on, we've come to a place where we're ready to take the next step. We're going from the intervention to either a vehicle, a plane, sometimes, in many cases, hundreds of miles away from where the intervention took place. Right, Tony?
Yeah, absolutely. Matter of fact, most of the time it is. There's going to be travel involved,
right,
in the transport. There's times where in some of your larger metropolitan areas where the treatment center may not be too far, so it's a car drive or something like that. But most of the time, it's going to be a plane, a car drive into an airport, and then transport from the airport.
Is it common for the interventionist that has facilitated the intervention to be the one that transports, or is it somebody else?
No, I totally, I'm opposed to family members. Of course I am. I mean, I think it needs to be the interventionist. That's what I do, all the way to handoff. I mean, they need to see it all the way through. I need to see it all the way through and communicate with the family along the way. What's going on, keep them comforted at home, that their loved one is moving forward and transported all the way through the process to the detox or to the treatment center where you do a clean handoff.
Do you find that there is usually by the end of the initial intervention that there is kind of a comforting rapport that has been built between the interventionist and the one being intervened on?
It can go a couple of ways. You can be the enemy, or you can be, like the guy that came in on a white horse.
Right.
But most of the time, it's kind of in between. But when you get one that's, I had one up in Philadelphia that I did several years back. I actually did this one with Ben Levinson, and we got to the airport, and he wasn't a happy camper at all. And of course, our flight got canceled, and so we were together in his hometown, Philadelphia, for 12 hours before we finally caught a flight out back down here to Texas. And he wasn't a happy camper. There was very, very few words said. But I kept a good eye on him and communicated with the family what was going on. And of course, then I've had guys that are just real talkative, and they're happy that somebody did something. You get that the alcoholic or addict connection with them. And that's
Sure.
that's the main thing, is you got that connection with them, and you know where they're at and what they're feeling at that moment in time and what's going on. And so a lot of times, they'll open up to you. And by the way, when they do open up to you, they're giving you so much information. I mean, there's so much background information that the individual will give you that they will not disclose in front of the family.
Sure.
Families only know about 10% of it, if that much. So, a lot of times on these transports, boy, I'll tell you what, it'll open up the door so you can hand the treatment team some real good information by the time you get there. Include what all they're doing, because if there's, if it's somebody that's addicted to opiates or benzos or something like that, I mean, they're going to need a detox. So a lot of times you don't know what's going on until you get on the ground. And
Sure.
so you've got to communicate that real quickly with the treatment center so that they have a protocol in place for them when they get there. So that's important stuff. But most of them are relieved. That's been my experience. Most of them are relieved, and very few are real oppositional and kicking around, whatever.
Okay, so in dealing with somebody who's a minor versus a legal adult, is the transport different?
Yeah, there I would recommend a family member come along. in that case there. Yeah, I really recommend that the parents come, or one of the parents come at least, for liability purposes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And
sure.
Do you ever have to strong arm anybody?
No, I've chased people around. I've been trying to make that last drug deal, before they go.
Yeah.
I had a guy one time up in the Dallas area that he kept squeezing outside, and I had to keep. Once you get into the intervention, I mean, you're glued. You don't want them running off or making deals like in this case here. I mean, this guy was all over the board. And thank God I had another individual with me that was able to keep the family in bay while I followed this guy around, because he agreed to go to treatment. Then he started moving outside, and then he moved to the alley, and I knew what he was doing. He was waiting for somebody to come and give him something. And of course, I was able to abort that and get him back in. But I've never had anybody that's come fisticuffs with or
right.
Like that.
Right.
And I'm also 6'1" and played linebacker, so.
So it isn't often you have to be a transport bouncer then,
you don't, there's not much to worry about, as far as that goes. I mean, you win their trust pretty quick that, look, I'm not your enemy.
Right.
I'm your friend. And we're going to get you down here and, start moving you down this path of wellness. And sometimes they'll reflect back on what happened in the intervention itself. A lot of times they will, and I'll ask them questions like, well, what do you think was most powerful? But I don't know. There's a way of just changing the channel on these guys. You can move into something that you can pretty much figure out what they like to talk about, if they're talkative, and talk about that. A lot of times there's many questions, obviously, about where they're going.
Do you find that men are more talkative during the transport than women, or the other way around?
Really, I don't. Nah, both ways.
Both ways, yeah.
It's equivalent. I mean, you get some. Well, it also depends on the substance too.
Yeah.
You got a guy that's transporting a woman or a man that's transporting, and they've been doing loads of, let's say, heroin, and they don't have their drug of no choice with them. Of course, I'll explain that at some other point. But they have. We'll use drug of choice for this radio show. But they have their drug of choice. They don't have their drug of choice. They're not going to be happy campers, and they're typically going to start getting sick on you during the transport. So a lot of times, if they have a prescription of Suboxone or something like that, it has to be prescribed, of course, and you give them a couple of Suboxones for the trip. But they're not going to be real talkative. Your stimulant addicts, methamphetamine addicts, cocaine addicts, they're going to want to burn it up. They're going to tell you about everything.
Yeah, you bet.
And they'll wear you out.
We know that and some people still do this, but particularly in the Founders Day of the Alcoholics Anonymous Fellowship, many times these guys that would work with these late stage alcoholics, they would have plastic lining in their back seats of their cars. They would bring with them a flask of whiskey or some form of alcohol. Some people don't understand that. They think, well, how could you do that? You're trying to get them off the stuff. But I mean, there are some cases where, depending on how sick the person is, you could end up killing them if you don't medicate them before they get to detox. Is that true?
It is.
Yeah.
And you have to be very aware of that. An opiate addict won't die. I mean, they'll feel like they're going to die.
Right.
They won't die on you. But if somebody's taken, Xanax or Valium or Klonopin or something along those lines, they definitely need to have something in their system. And then, of course, an alcoholic, you have to keep them what I call lubed. A lot of times I'll be talking to parents. There wasn't an intervention involved per se, but I work with the family, and I'll tell them, so make sure that they have alcohol in them before they get in the plane. They just hit the ceiling. They're like, well, you're a treatment center advocating, you're a rehab, advocating alcohol. I'm like, you have to keep some sort of lubrication in them, or they could seize on an airplane, have a lot of complications. So make sure that they have drink. But one of the things is definitely when you're transporting, I always, I allow that, but I keep a real close eye on consumption. I mean, we're not talking about getting hammered before they go.
Right.
go to treatment, that's not the proper way to do this. But you do want to keep a certain amount of alcohol in them. I do not carry any pills with me, Xanax or anything like that. That's all done pre-intervention.
Sure.
And if they have something around, then I'll allow them to bring it with them if it's a prescription. If it's not, then I'll have them take it before we get on the plane, not carrying any, substances in their pockets and stuff like that.
Right.
So, so they don't get in trouble. But yes, and I will tell you, it's so important with the alcoholic, though, above all. Now, here's another reason for transport too, because if you put an alcoholic in an airport with money in their pocket, they're going to get stuck at some airport bar. I've done enough transport. I've done transports and sitting at airports watching luggage go around the carousel, and while they're up there drinking their lives away. So it's real important to keep an eye on them and not let them get too intoxicated, and more importantly, have somebody that's with them, so that they're not on their own up there making connections and everything else.
So is it common to transport? The interventionist is transporting the person being intervened on with more than one person. I mean, it's not just one interventionist traveling with the guy or gal.
Oh yeah, it depends. Again, you may have a transporter alone where you do the intervention, you hand off to somebody who's going to do the transport alone, or maybe maybe it does take a couple of people. I've not been involved in anything that's taken a couple of people. Taken two. Everyone I've ever done, I've transported myself. Now I do know some people that have done that. They'll do that for safety purposes. If they have somebody that they really feel like is a threat to, harm them or something along those lines. But, that's all. This is, again, going back to a previous show about pre-intervention work. You pretty much know a pretty good idea what you have. What you're walking into and who you have.
And how do airports deal with this? I mean, are they aware at all that the person may be under the influence, or do you ever have any problems with that?
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about that, and that's where you're very professional. You go up to TSA, you tell them exactly what's going on. Sometimes you have letters from the treatment center.
Yeah.
Obviously, you'll have the intervention letters and whatnot, and you'll let them know, and they'll take up to some special security a lot of times into a room and check them out. Now, I had one guy one time that had done a load of heroin before, right as we got to the airport, and didn't even know he had it on him, but he did it. And by the time we were fixing to go through security, of course, he was nodding out and everything else. So,
sure.
I pulled him back and I wheeled him in a wheelchair and just said, look, he's not doing good. I'm getting him to treatment. So, there's all kinds of different ways, but the best rule of thumb is just be honest with TSA. They understand that this takes place. It's very common. Just you got to make sure that you tell them that we're willing to go through these extra security, whatever we got to go, and then I'm going to chaperone. I'll be with this individual. I've had you get them on a flight, and then oh my goodness, that's a little tricky too. Once you get them on a flight, because now they're sitting in a seat wanting to tear it up, and you got to kind of be a governor for them, if you will.
Yeah. So do you search them before you transport?
No, I've never done a search, where we have them pull their, pockets out and stuff like that.
Right.
Usually that's why I like doing them in a neutral place where they're not, around some stuff that's hidden or whatever. You stay on them real close while they're packing. You're watching everything. Listen, you're going to miss. I mean, there's no way that you can strip a guy down and say, okay, get your clothes back on. I mean, you got to treat them with respect and dignity. And
sure.
So, those times where they're gonna slip by you. There's just no way to make sure that completely happens. But it's a very rare thing when you jump a plane and you got some guy that's going back and forth to the bathroom doing heroin. I mean, I've not experienced that one. I'm sure some people have, but I've not experienced.
Sure.
It. Most of them are real willing, to just go ahead and put it down and come on with us. So.
What about the person that changes their mind once you get to the treatment facility? Are they on their own, or do you give them a plane ticket back? What happens?
No, Well, that again, you go back to the pre-intervention work, and if you're good enough, I mean, you can talk them out of the trees. You get them over to. Well, once they've gotten to the treatment center, of course, that's their responsibility. That's another thing the Benchmark Recovery Center does real well. Is again, it's one thing to get them, it's another to keep them, and so there's a way to land somebody, what we call land them, into the treatment center. Now, pre-treatment, if you got somebody that's oppositional, all of a sudden they've raised me, I'm not going to do this. Then, of course, you fall back to just talking them out of trees. I call it talking them out of trees. Just be real calm with them and explain to look, all the boundaries that we're setting at intervention are real. If you call your mom right now, she's not going to answer. Of course, by then, I've already picked up on it, and I've already been in touch via text or whatever, with the family members, letting them know what's going on. So then the transport's so important to stay in touch with the family. That's why. And then you'll get a guy that'll stand up and I'll just tell them, look, just get in there, give it a try, and you get them in there, and then of course, once you've handed them off, then the treatment center, it's their job to keep them. Of course, they're loaded with information. The front end, a lot of information on this individual. I mean, that's what we do. That's why, like working with Matt and I work hand in glove. Matt will be doing the intervention, I'll be doing the admissions work, and of course he's communicating constantly in the background with me on what's going on, and then of course it's a clean handoff. So, I work real well with the interventionists out there that are doing the interventions because I know what they're up against and what they're doing.
Sure. Well, this is fascinating stuff to me because many people that are listening right now, until this workshop, many of them perhaps have only seen what we see on television, which is like we've talked about before. It's just a very small piece, and
you see the end result of a lot of work.
Yeah, you really do. Okay, so we're gonna take a short break, and when we come back, let's talk about treatment placement. Let's talk about let's tell the listeners what kind of treatment for what kind of situation. I mean, this is really specialized stuff, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Placement is important.
All right, folks, don't go away. More when we come back with Tony Messbarger of Benchmark Recovery Center. BenchmarkCenter.com is the website. We'll be right back. Whether you have completed alcohol treatment or drug rehab multiple times or have never been to any type of structured treatment program, the Benchmark Recovery Center offers a full continuum of care for addiction recovery. This is the Monty'man from Take 12 Recovery Radio. And may I recommend to you Benchmark Recovery Center. They offer an extended care recovery program for adult men and women struggling with alcoholism and drug addiction. Located east of Austin, Texas, on 70 acres, the gender-specific 90-day residential program focuses on the 12 steps, life skills, spirituality, and fitness. After completing the residential phase, residents transition into company-owned sober living and 12 months of aftercare monitoring. If you're ready to learn how to live a sober, responsible, committed life full of promise, Benchmark is here for you. To speak with an admissions specialist, call 866-905-4550 or visit the website at benchmarkcenter.com. Discover a life full of permanent sobriety with Benchmark Recovery Center. All right, welcome back. And, of course, that website is benchmarkcenter.com. This is a 4-part educational workshop on the topic of drug and alcohol intervention, sponsored by Benchmark Recovery Center. And our guest, of course, is Tony Messbarger. He is a admissions consultant for Benchmark. I've been with them for a very long time. Tony, how long have you been with Benchmark?
Well, I was. It used to be called Mark Houston Recovery, and of course,
right.
We opened it up in June of 2006, and of course, we had a lot of. We did about six months worth of work before we even opened up the doors, before we even had property. We were designing the program itself. So really, if you're looking at it, it really goes back to probably late 2005, and then I was with Mark all the way through 2008. came out of there and worked for Ben Levinson in Origins, helped them open that place up, and then of course came back after a couple of years down there. Came back and I've been with Benchmark now another almost 3 years now. So this is home, and so I love it. I was doing the admissions for Origins, and then for I guess a couple of years there, I did remote admissions. So I've done a little bit of everything. Built them. You have to tear one down.
Yeah, I understand.
They're all prospering.
Yeah, excuse me?
They're all prospering.
They're all prospering, yeah. And there are, and I want to say this as kindly as I can, but I think it's very important. The fact is, the truth of the matter is, there are treatment centers that are very qualified, that treat the whole individual, that understand the problem and the solution. And then there are treatment facilities that simply don't get it. And I don't want to, sound like I am poo-pooing anybody, but I've got to tell you, when it comes to this is life and death, and we can waste an enormous amount of valuable time by introducing somebody to a treatment facility that is not really doing the person any justice, and it's very frustrating. And so I believe, and that's why I'm such a big advocate for treating the whole individual. I believe that we have to be very, very careful where we place people when it comes to saving their lives. Benchmark is one of these places that does it right. Origins is another. And the treating the whole individual, what are some of the pieces that are involved with that, Tony?
Well, in the exploration of placement, one of the things that has to happen for sure is you look at different factors. Has this person, what's their background, obviously? I mean, is it psychological issues? Have they been diagnosed anything, bipolar, depression, manic depressive, whatever kind of a disorder, which is very common, by the way, dual diagnosis.
Sure.
And then, of course, if they have any history of violence or anything like that, you'll know all, you get all that information. And, of course, have they ever had a treatment episode? Have they ever been to treatment? What's interesting is a lot of people will claim treatment, detox as a treatment, and they think that's a treatment where they've gone for 7 days and dried out. They don't realize that that's not a real treatment episode itself. And then, of course, I just, and I will tell you, I do not believe in IOPs. I just, not for the person that's being called in for an intervention. Forget about it. I mean, if they're being called for an intervention, the IOP is not even on the table.
And that's for the listeners' sake. Yeah. That's intensive outpatient, correct?
Correct. And let me rephrase that. It's not that I don't believe in it. There's a population. It's a very small population that can have success in an outpatient setting. It might be a housewife that has just started to drink, and she hasn't gotten too bad, and maybe there's an executive or somebody along those lines. But it generally, if an interventionist has been called, then we're past that point. Promise you.
Yeah, sure.
But placement is very important. I mean, you got to take a lot of factors in. You got to take age, gender. You've got to take a lot of those type of things into consideration before you start recommending different places to go. I believe, I really do in long term. I mean, it's proven. The longer, the better. And so I come from, the only thing that I really know is long term, 9 or above. And, it takes every bit of that. I mean, the name of the game is structure and accountability, and the longer you can do that without institutionalizing the individual. You want to not have a nice phased approach, much like Benchmark Recovery Center has. Where you take them through an intensive, 3-month program, 3 to 4 month program, and then you transition them into transitional living, where it's a segue back out, where they transition back out with a high level of structure around them, where they can still have life coming at them, but they still have the high level of accountability around them and people that can support them through these life events that are coming at them, such as finding work and family of origin issues and stuff like that. But if you got a guy, a lot of times you'll get people. It depends on insurance and their ability to pay privately too. Because if you got somebody that's completely insurance dependent, then of course you're going to have to start looking at the 30 to 45, upwards of 60-day treatment center that will allow that if they're insurance dependent. In other words, they don't have the ability to pay out of pocket.
Right.
And insurance also matters. It's what kind of insurance they have. Blue Cross Blue Shield, Aetna, Humana, United Health, whatever they have, that's really important to know right up front whether they're going to a private pay model or not, because the insurance will help. In Benchmark's case, of course, we've never taken insurance, and there's a reason why. A couple of reasons why. One is we don't want the insurance companies dictating to us how long we're going to treat this individual.
That's right.
They're notorious for kicking people to the curb, before they're ever treated. And two, we don't want them dictating to us what our curriculum is going to look like. And that's what they do. They want to tell you so many hours of this or so many hours of that. None of it's got to do with getting sober. So we just decided we're not going to do that. So, but anyway, so insurance is very important to find out what kind of insurance they got, because some insurance companies work better at different facilities. And knowing what facilities work best with those insurance is really important. Then, of course, the ability to pay out of pocket is very important, because usually there's going to be an out-of-pocket cost, whether it be a deductible to be met or whether it be an out-of-network cost to be met. You got to factor all those things in. And then, of course, if it's a longer term of care, there's going to be either transitional living or sober living. It's going to become private pay at some point in time. So you have to look at all those factors, and then you make the best recommendation based on those factors. But I said in an earlier show, I do not believe in sending somebody that's inappropriate to a place. If they're inappropriate, they do not need to be there. That's where the integrity comes in. You just don't send somebody anywhere because you're going to get a referral out of them later on.
Exactly. Well, and this issue of cost, I mean, it's really gigantic, isn't it? I mean, isn't this just a huge milestone to overcome? I mean, listen, we do things like the core conference, where the 12-steppers and the clinicians come together and try to get on the same side again, like in the old days. We do things like the Access conference, which is primarily for the treatment professionals, understanding the and I'll say this tongue-in-cheek, the Affordable Health Care Plan. And then we have where we're sitting down at the table. I sat down with, there must have been 60 people on this board of directors for an organization. And I was invited to sit in on this meeting here some time back. And the discussion was all around insurance companies and cost and all of that. And one of the things that was stated over and over again, but fell on deaf ears, was we got to stop trying to depend on the insurance companies. We're spending all this time talking about it, on what to do, how to manipulate them, how they manipulate us. We just got to cut them loose. But people didn't want to hear it. And so when it comes right back to, of course, is the addict and or alcoholic whose life is on the line, and what is coming between them and a life of productivity and fulfillment is the almighty dollar.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it's sad. The insurance. What I see with insurance is this. First of all, substance abuse treatment or chemical dependency treatment does not have a good name with insurance companies because of the lack of success.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look out there, the success is just not there, and they're paying for people to go to treatment multiple times, so they're getting soaked, if you will. So what's happened here is that the insurance companies have we got a black eye. Okay?
Yeah, sure.
We've given them a black eye, and they literally do not like substance abuse. I mean, that's what I've found. Very few of them are real good payers. They don't like paying for substance abuse. The other part of it too is that the industry has picked up on some things here that I've noticed over the years. That okay, well, if it's not going to be a substance abuse issue that they'll pay for this disorder, and so they're really leaning into the disorders in order to get the days for treatment. And of course, the insurance companies are real willing to pay for somebody who has a diagnosis other than alcoholism or drug addiction. I mean, so a lot of treatment centers have found that out, and so what they do is they do all these different things with clinicians and everything else to build a clinical case why that person needs to be there other than substance abuse. Now, I'm not saying that people do not, there's not people that have
right.
clinical necessities that need to be addressed, but it needs to be addressed at the appropriate time, not when they come off the street and they're still 2 weeks away from off of heroin and they can't even put a sentence together, and we're going to give them bipolar.
Yeah, well, of course they're depressed. Of course they're manic. They just came off of 2 years of putting a needle of methamphetamine in their arm. What are you, nuts?
Yeah, and again, going back to the benchmark approach and what used to be Mark Houston Recovery, and Mark saw this. And,
right.
Not to discount the clinical necessities and the clinical piece of this, but hey, I mean, goodness, let's get these people good and sober first. Get them nutritionally right, get them, working out, and the supervision of a personal trainer, get them started on the step work. You'd be amazed what happens just there. And then, within a couple of weeks, 3 to 4 weeks when they would typically be walking out of a 30-day residential treatment center, then you plug the psychiatry in to see exactly how they're presenting at that point in time, where they've had a little bit of distance between the drug and the streets and the drugs and whatnot, and then you can start get a real true beat on what's really going on, because we know the drugs and the alcohol are not the problem. That's their solution to a larger problem.
Right.
But you got to get them sober first.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I've seen time and time again in this industry. Again, is people they're bringing people in and they're diagnosing them with something right away, and then of course they keep them in a treatment episode by doing that. And I might just let a big cat out of the bag. Who knows?
Yeah.
I'm not in this business to win friends.
Right.
I never was. I never have been. I'm in this business.
Me either, brother.
To help the individual get well, and that's it. So
yeah.
It's not about winning friends here.
Yeah, you bet. And let's talk about the other aspect of it. And we're talking about brain function and mental illness and even nutrition. That's something that in many cases people, especially people that are attending 12-step support meetings only, and what I mean by that is they're not working a program, they're just going to meetings. One of the things, and even if they are working a program, many times the nutrition thing we don't even touch that. And Johnny is eating ice cream at 9 o'clock at night, can't understand why he's got migraine headaches the next morning. So he's popping, migraine medicine instead of just knocking off the ice cream. But there's all sorts of stuff like that, and nutrition plays a huge part in sobriety. But there's a piece that, and this, it shouldn't be controversial, but it is. It always has been. It probably always will be. And that is the spiritual solution that is at the root of the success of the person being restored to sanity. You know it. I know it. Treatment centers that are worth their weight know it. The founders of 12-step fellowships and programs, they knew it. And yet we dance around this issue so much, it makes me sick, Tony. I at the core conference at Amelia Island Plantation in Florida last year, there was an introduction, symposium thing, and there was a panel and so forth, and we talked about all sorts of things, and I couldn't help it. And they know, they see me coming, they know. that I'm going to stir the pot. And so I said, Monty Meyer from Take 12 Recovery Radio, and I could hear it. I could hear the here we go. And I said, look it. I said, when are we going to talk about the spiritual solution? This is called a spiritual disease. It's only called the disease one time in the big book. It's called a spiritual disease. I said, if there's a spiritual disease, then we have to treat it with a spiritual solution. When are we going to stop dancing around this God issue, and let's get down to brass tacks with this thing? And a guy in the corner, who I'd never met before, goes, finally, somebody said it. And then a whole bunch of people in that corner just started cheering. I've never, and so that guy, by the way, came out later to the lobby where our booth was, where we were broadcasting from, ended up being Matt Brown. And of course, the story goes on from there. But here's the thing. Even with that support in that corner, even though I touched a nerve, do you know they went right back to their discussion as if I never said anything?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and really, the truth of the matter is that at the very end of the day, whether a person goes to whether they go to treatment for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, or 100 years.
Yeah.
At the very end of the day, it's going to be about their relationship with the power greater than themselves.
You bet.
And it's going to be about their relationship with the support group. And that's the truth. I mean, that's really what places are. That's what treatment is. It's a segue into the rooms of an anonymous program or a support group, if you will. There's plenty of support groups out there. And of course, their relationship with something greater than themselves. And I think it does get missed in this industry because, again, if we're highly focused in on the mental side of it,
yeah,
which is one component, body, it's part of it.
Right.
So body, spirit, and mind. And so, yeah, absolutely. But and that's what I see a lot of times. I mean, there'll be a heavy emphasis on the mind and all this, but there's no emphasis on the spirituality or the working out or anything along those lines. The physical body and the nutritional piece of it, and more importantly, the spiritual angle. That's again it's real. Doing this for years over at Benchmark Recovery, again formerly Mark Houston Recovery. I mean, that's what we're doing. We're doing God's work. I mean, because the bottom line is, at the end of the day, that's what it's going to be about. So by the time they get halfway through our process, they've had the required spiritual experience in order to move on down the road.
Right.
They've had an awakened spirit. Like, I promise you, you cannot go through this work without having some type of an awakening. And it's wide open, and that's why you walk on our property, you're going to feel it immediately. People will drive off our property going, there's something different about this place.
See, and that's what's so cool about it, because you don't have to strong arm anybody with some sort of spiritual baseball bat. The fact is, if you do this work, I believe if you really do it the way it was outlined to be done, you will come to a place, you will come to a crossroads at some point where you're going to have to make a spiritual decision. And whichever direction you go, that's fine. That's your decision. But you can't avoid that crossroad if it's done properly.
Well, and I'll tell you what's really neat, too, is, going back to our approach at Benchmark, what's really cool is this. Our psychiatrist will obviously do he'll do a initial assessment with the individual.
Yeah.
But he won't even see the individual until they've done the fifth step of the program. Till they've sat across somebody, invited God into that picture, and done their fifth step, because it's amazing what you get right there. Just that alone. I mean, you're going to clear a lot of stuff up right there.
Yeah.
Now, is it at the end? Is it at the very end of it? I mean, is that all that's going to be needed? No, not in a lot of cases. I mean, I see a therapist weekly. There's people. I got deep trauma issues, and I'm not afraid to admit that. And so it's a beginning, but I promise you, this isn't the same individual that the doctor saw when they came in the door.
Right.
And it'll be a totally different individual. Just did that spiritual work, the early steps of a 12-step program. not to mention the guys that are in their third, fourth month, that have completed their approach, written their approaches out. They've even made a few amends with people when they visit. They've listened to fifth steps themselves. They've told their story from the podium. I mean, once it's a ball of energy, spiritual energy that's rolling at any given time.
One of the things that two of the entities that get criticized the most, and we've talked about this before, within many of our recovery fellowships, are the faith community and the treatment community, and yet they're our biggest advocates, and we chop them up and spit them out much more than they ever do us. And it drives me crazy. But here's the thing that I'm seeing with organizations like Origins and Benchmark and Burning Tree and some of these, and I'm glad this is happening, where a lot of your modern today's 12-step fellowships are dropping the ball with the spiritual piece of this. Mm-hmm. Treatment facilities like Benchmark are picking it up. Because you guys know that's really where the solution lies, and just bringing somebody in for 30 days, shooting them back out, bringing them in, shooting them back out, that isn't doing anything. And so there are lots of treatment organizations, facilities, long term usually, that are really hitting what the true problem is, because like you said, alcohol, narcotics, those are the solutions. And they're just outward manifestations of an inward condition. Our inward condition is our separation from our Creator.
Absolutely. And by the way, if you look on page 52 of the Alcoholics Anonymous book, it talks about it. I mean, if you look at the malady itself, the spiritual sickness, if you will, it talks about that, having trouble in personal relationships, can't control my emotional nature, full of fear, useless, all of these signs. Well, if you stop and look at it, a lot of the malady, the internal condition, it's untreated alcoholism or drug addiction looks just like a disorder.
Yeah.
So it's like, so it's like, okay, so we're going to say that Johnny is bipolar. He hasn't been sober more than 3 days, and there's a psychiatrist seeing him, and they're throwing him on these medications because he's bipolar. Untreated alcoholism shows up as bipolar. 1 minute happy, 1 minute down, up and down, manic. The whole works. And so it's like, really? And that's, I can do a whole show on what I'm seeing with psychiatry.
Yeah.
And what they're doing. And, the zombies that are coming out of that.
Oh, my gosh, the Thorazine shuffle. Okay, so the individual comes in and they're in for long term. There is some point where the family is involved once again, face to face, right?
Absolutely. There's going to be a visitation at some point in time.
Yeah.
We really limited Benchmark. We really limited. They get a vote. One on average, two while they're during their stay for that 90-day period. And there's a reason for that. The phone calls are limited as well. We want as much outside distraction. We don't want any outside distractions. We want them focused, highly focused, and on our property. Any place that allows unlimited phone contact and visitation, I just don't see how it could possibly work. One bad phone call, it takes a week to refocus them. One bad visit, they want to leave. So we really limit the amount of contact. But yes, they're going to come face to face again at some point in time. And there's been a lot of work done. In our model, there's been a lot of work done with the family already. We know who's coming on property. We know who we have. And, of course, we're known to not even allow people, some family members not to visit because it's controversial. And they would do more harm than they would good, or they're still angry or whatever. They haven't participated and whatnot. And maybe it's a real unhealthy relationship that needs to be severed, things along those lines. So, at some point in time, they're going to get face-to-face, but they're coached up along the way. That's another thing I love about this place is that, we don't do a formal family program per se where we have, the families come in and we do a workshop for a weekend. And, it's as good as while you're on the property. Everybody goes back to raising kids and doing work and doing whatever they do. And of course, they digress and forget what they want. So Benchmark Recovery Center, they're going to work, and other treatment centers do this too. But Benchmark, this is their forte is to work with these families in correlation to the treatment episode. In other words, while the individual is in treatment, Benchmark is working with the family. I mean, they're talking to them. They're giving them, access to development notes online. There's a lot of different things that happen that keep the family on board, because you have to have the family completely 100% on board, even during the treatment episode, or when Johnny wants to leave, he's gone. So It's a lot of work. It's a whole lot of work. There's got to be a real smooth handoff to the center that you're handing off to. And then it's, of course, my responsibility is, whether I'm doing an intervention or whether I'm doing admissions, it's my job to stay on top of that admission.
Okay, so let me back up just for a minute. Some people that are brand new to this stuff don't understand why their loved one needs to be in, for lack of a better term, a blackout period when they come in. That's important, isn't it? So the person stays focused and isn't hindered by outside junk.
Yeah, you want them. You want them completely taken away from their environment with no phone contact. I mean, what's there to talk about?
Yeah.
Really, if you stop and think about it, and it's an acclimation period. It's when, I call it landing, acclimating, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But this is where you're landing the guy, the girl. This is where you're getting them settled in. I mean, the least amount of outside distractions, and usually it's going to be within the first week, because first couple of weeks is real critical, because this is when they're going to want to leave. This is when they're going to want to work their families over, and they're going to want to leave. So that blackout period is for a purpose. Again, I've been to treatment centers myself where I walked in, and of course I had immediate access to a payphone or a phone, and I just continue terrorizing my family, and building a case why I don't need to be doing what I'm doing. And
sure.
It's like everybody needs a break, from this whole thing. It's part of getting everybody out of the crisis mode.
Okay, Tony, so the person goes through 30, 60, 90 days have gone by. At what point do you reevaluate them to see if they need to be there longer?
Well, that happens. Okay, so that's a great question. Okay, Benchmark. This is what we do again that I'm really proud of.
Uh-huh.
And that is that the family's part of a larger team, and we're moving through this. We don't come to people with use a football analogy, fourth quarter with 2 minutes to play, and say, hey, by the way, Johnny's going to need an extra mop, or Johnny's going to need this. I mean, the family completely understands what's going on in the whole process, so they're part of a larger team. So we're not springing any surprises on anybody. A lot of times, what you'll find in long term, Monty, that first month it can be a wash. It can be a complete wash. I mean, typically, and think about this for a second. I mean, it takes 2 weeks just to get their equilibrium back, get them walking back, get them to even, put a sentence together in a lot of cases. And then, in a regular state, a 30-day, 28-day stay, I mean, you've got 2 weeks to change a lifetime of behaviors. And then still the disciplines, more importantly, that are necessary for permanent sobriety. It's not going to happen. So what we do is we work with the family in correlation to the addict. And they're on board. I mean, they know exactly what's going on here. They know exactly what we're going to recommend, when we recommend it, and why we're recommending it.
Okay. And so, do you ever run into folks that don't want to leave because of the protective environment?
Not at Benchmark. By the time they leave Benchmark, man, I mean they're pretty armed, and they're ready to go. I mean, these guys have just been through a serious treatment episode or a rehab episode. And so they're pretty much ready to go. And because we've got transitional living, where they transition in,
sure,
90% to 95% of the men go to the transitional living, and on the women's side, it's probably more like 80 to 85%, maybe upwards to 85%, because some of them are moms going home or whatever. But it's rites of passage, and they move that direction. They're happy to leave, of course, but they're fearful like most, and but that's why you have to have that structure and that transitional piece in place. for them to transition into. But yeah, we get people from time to time that, obviously it's a safe nest, it's a safe place to be.
How many people on average halfway through their treatment voice the opinion that they feel like they are called to be a treatment professional?
Oh goodness! I had a girl on our women's program. Of course, we have a women and men's program on separate piece of property.
Yeah.
We had a woman one time. She hadn't even been there a week, and she approached me and said, "Well, I'm going to open a bunch of these up in my state, in the state that I live in." And like, why don't we get well first? Why don't we get well first? Let's concentrate on what we're doing here. So it's very common. I mean, I can remember doing that myself, coming out of a treatment center, really, looking around, going, "God, I'd really like to do this someday." Of course, here I am, but it's very common for people to do that. There's a real high level. By the time you've gone through the step work, there's a real yearning to give back.
There is.
And
there is.
And of course, we all understand that it's, it talks about in our book, our very lives depend on our constant thought of others and how we can be of help.
Yeah.
And so, you have that spirit in you, and it's like, it's not unusual. And by the way, we make the best treatment professionals, obviously, especially in a model like ours, because we've been there and done that.
Yeah, you're right. I always tell people that kind of, laugh at the person when they say, maybe it's their third day in an AA meeting or something, and they're talking about being a counselor, and somebody will put them down for it. I'm saying, hey, you know what? You may want to encourage them to get well first and all that kind of thing, but don't crush their dreams. I mean, it may be the first healthy dream the guy has had, and who knows if his recovery is going down the road it's supposed to be, he might make one of the greatest interventionists, one of the greatest treatment providers, that the country's ever seen. So, yeah, you're right. Because isn't it funny how within 12-step support meetings, people will talk about how they're not going to go to that treatment center or that facility or that outpatient or whatever, because those guys aren't addicts and alcoholics. But then when they meet somebody who's an addict or an alcoholic that wants to be a treatment provider, they tell them, well, that's funny. You can't do that.
No, it's amazing. Yeah, but I mean, we make the best. I mean, obviously, the one thing again, the whole team is here, of course, is in recovery. I mean, it just won't work if you're not, because you cannot transmit something you don't own yourself.
That's right.
I mean, that's as simple as that. So how can you possibly go somewhere where you got somebody that's reading out of a book on how to make this thing happen?
Sure.
It's like, I'm not talking about the big book either.
Right.
They're
Right.
kind of just run some kind of modality out there that has got. And I'm not, again, if this person needs it, that's fine. But let's get them geared up to what's important out there at the end of the day.
Sure, you bet.
So,
well, listen, Tony, we're almost out of time. How would you like to wrap this 4-part workshop up today?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for this opportunity. This has been great, and I just really appreciate you giving me the confidence in me to do this. I just really impress on people that are out there that it's not what it looks like as far as the intervention goes. I mean, TV in a lot of ways has tainted it to the point to where everybody thinks it's dramatics and it's snot and spit flying everywhere. It's not like that whatsoever. Most of the time, matter of fact, there's a lot of tears involved. It's a very emotional event, but it can bring a lot of people together. And so don't try to do this on your own. Get some professional help to help you out, and then, of course, placement's going to be important too. So you want to make sure that the individuals that you hire know where to place this individual. There's a lot of good places out there, and Monty, you mentioned them during this show. There's a lot of good places out there that their hearts are in it. 100% of it, and if your heart's not in it, you can forget about it. So, I don't know. I just thank you. If anybody needs to get a hold of me, they can certainly get a hold of Benchmark, and my number's up there. They can certainly get a hold of me.
Absolutely, and
folks, walk them through all this stuff.
You bet, folks. I would encourage you to do that. Listen, the young lady I was talking to the other day, who had listened to this show and was looking into interventions for her ex. she said, I'm just so afraid. Is this the right thing to do? And I tried to encourage her. I said, well, what's happening right now isn't working.
Oh, yeah.
So, step out on faith a little bit, and because it's not going to hurt. What's going to hurt is to do nothing. And
exactly. And the guilt and shame behind not doing anything.
Yeah.
About it while you had, while you were thinking about doing it. I mean, there's, and I love what you just said, because I use that quite often, and that is, well, what you're doing right now is not working. Obviously, it's not working. We need to try a different approach.
Yeah.
And be guided through it. So it's always there's never a dull moment.
That's for sure. All right, this wraps up this 4-part educational series workshop, Understanding Intervention. If you want to make copies of this, you can just right-click on the download MP3 link, and it'll say save target as, save link as, or save as. You can save it to your hard drive. You can burn copies of it, or you can listen to it by clicking on the MP3 stream play button. You can also watch the show and listen to it on YouTube. And I would just encourage all of you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, or you can just subscribe to our daily email announcement of what show is broadcasting on what day, so you don't have to go directly to the website. You can just open up your email and go to the show. There's just a whole lot of stuff that we have for you at take12radio.com on your internet dial. And this very possibly could be one of the most important projects we've ever done here at Take 12 Radio, because it's all about saving lives, and not just saving a life so a person can go back to what they've always done, but to help change lives, to help introduce people to a process that will bring them into a relationship with their Creator, a relationship that is oftentimes being reestablished and refounded with their loved ones, spouses, children, parents, employers, friends, people that we come really close to losing when we allow the tail to wag the dog and not the other way around. So we just want to be a help here at Take 12 Radio. You can email us at take12radio@comcast.net. All the contact information for Benchmark is right here. Just click on the Benchmark banner on this workshop, and give Tony a call. He is an admissions consultant for Benchmark. Been with him since the beginning. He knows what he's talking about. Tony, thank you so much, brother.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Thank you, my friend. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, my friends. Until our next broadcast, our next workshop, whatever, our recovery music, which, by the way, plays 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This is the Monty'man, along with Tony and Messbarger, and we are wishing God's perfect serenity for you.
This has been a broadcast of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting.